So I recently just beat Resident Evil 8 is a fantastic game. It takes all the elements I loved from RE4 and put it into an action-packed and genuinely horrifying experience that kept me grinning and filled with terror over the entire 12-hour playtime. Picking up after the events of RE7, Ethan and Mia's seemingly picturesque family life is shattered when one fateful night, Chris murders Mia and kidnaps Ethan and his daughter Rose. But after their vehicle is ambushed, Ethan finds that Rose has been swept away into an ancient conspiracy involving a town lost in time, supernatural creatures of the night, and a family of power-crazed and trauma-infested villains. I love the story, and I also love that while the main focus was the bond between father and daughter, it didn't mind delving into some over-the-top and also surprisingly serious and terrifying topics here and there. However, if you're a die-hard RE fan, you might not care for some of the retcons here. Ethan was an alright main character, and I generally loved his fairy tale-like journey to save his daughter. Chris's development over the course of the story was an interesting, winding set of twists and turns, and the merchant by the name of the Duke, despite his grotesque appearance, was my favorite character and was absolutely charismatic. The villains were a mixed bag. Lady D and her daughters were absolutely the best part of Ethan's rogues gallery, but the manic and energetic Heisenberg was also a lot of fun to watch chew the scenery. Despite some of the villains being vastly overshadowed, everyone did have personality, and an odd sense of fractured but still very much relatable and human flaws and fears. You like Resident Evil 4 and Snake Eater, but want them to be in first person? Well then you'll probably really enjoy this. Shooting is incredibly weighty and responsive, pulling off headshots is so satisfying, every weapon feels different enough than the last, and upgrading to the next better weapon gave you a great sense of progression. There's also the useful and intuitive crafting system, and ammo was plentiful enough to keep the game moving, so I never got stuck. Enemies thankfully never felt too spongy outside of some of the optional mini-boss encounters. The variety was freaky and fun, and some of the baddies were straight up nightmare-inducing. All the bosses were easy enough to get through them without ever getting frustrated, which was a refreshing surprise because I usually am not too big a fan of boss battles in these games. There is so much gameplay variety here, from hunting game to cook meals to upgrade your stats, to searching for treasure and weapons in tombs and caves, to fighting legendary creatures, right down to just exploring the mysterious village, which was surprisingly a cross between fully open world and Metroidvania. The Duke's Cart was a fantastic store, with plenty of upgrade paths, the option to actually buy ammo this time thankfully, and relatively fair prices on things. Also, speaking of the menus, they were all very easy to read, and the quality of life improvements were amazing. One of my only major complaints with the game, and more so the controls, is that examining items is really clunky. Otherwise, the controls were darn nice and quite comfy to play the game with. Visually, the game looks amazing with enough style to keep it from looking uncomfortably uncanny. The world had truly stunning art direction, the way the weapons looked and were animated was just pure bliss. The enemies and boss designs, especially Lady D and her girls in the Heisenberg boss battle, were just fantastic, and performance-wise, outside of a few loading stutters, even in graphics mode, it was a mostly smooth 30 FPS. But for those just wanting pure butter, you'll want to enable the FPS performance mode. The only thing that wasn't amazing in terms of the engine was the physics-based puzzles. These just didn't work all that well. In terms of the sound, guns had weight, the environmental sounds were atmospheric and engrossing, the voice acting was very memorable, even if all the guys outside of Ethan sounded a bit like Keanu Reeves. Once again, Lady D stole the show with a powerful sense of fun and well-acted charisma, and even Ethan, outside of a few moments, was well-acted. The only not-so-amazing thing to me was the OST, which I can't even remember. Alright, I have 3 spoilers I want to talk about, so if you want to skip them, skip to the time I have provided. Otherwise, on we go. Village has generally the scariest moment in the entire series, and that is the fetus chase in the lower parts of the dollhouse. Later in the game, my face generally hurt from smiling too much, because when you get to drive the mech, and especially when you get to run and gun your way through the village at the end as Chris, then the ultimate power fantasy moments were just gameplay perfection. And with all that said, I can't tell you how excited I was to play RE8, and how happy I am that it lived up to my hype. With thrills, spooks, and gameplay galore that never gets old, if you're looking for a fresh take on Resident Evil, or want more RE4 that isn't just RE4, this will definitely be the game for you. As always, thank you all so much for watching. If you want to help support the channel, please consider sharing the video with a friend, or checking out my Patreon linked in the description below. I want to give a big thank you to not only the show's patrons, but also my great friend Orion Knight, for making the wonderful punish neat that you'll see in both the thumbnail and occasionally in the videos, like right now. Their social media accounts will be linked in the description as well. If you have any comments, questions, or recommendations, leave them in the comments, as I read and reply to everything. Until next time, this is Thierry Williamson signing off until the next video. See you guys!